Hey guys, tonight we lose our freedom. The first thing you notice is the smell of smoke that isn't coming from your own fire. The second is the silence where your village used to be loud, no laughing, no haggling, no goats making that awful yelling noise like they've just heard bad news. You step outside, barefoot, onto packed earth that's still warm from yesterday's sunlight, but also from the ashes. Not all of the homes burned, just enough for the rest to understand. Your house is still standing. Kinda. Your roof leaks. Your door hangs sideways. But you're alive. And that's the Mongol mercy you've been gifted. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I'm guessing none of you are curled up in a yurt being taxed for your own dinner yet. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't know how long it's been since the cavalry came. 3 days, maybe 4? Time doesn't work the same after your neighbors are either enslaved, vanished, or suddenly fluent in Mongolian for reasons you don't want to ask about. You were spared. That's the word the man on the tall horse used, spared, as though your life were a dropped coin he couldn't be bothered to pick up. Now, you're a conquered peasant, not a prisoner. Worse, you're useful. You dig, you carry, you scrape bowls clean with your fingers. You bow low enough to touch the dust with your nose. You say yes to questions you don't understand. Historians still argue whether Mongol administration in conquered territories was pragmatic genius or just militarized micromanagement. The truth? It's both. They didn't care who you were before as long as now. You were theirs. And you are. Fully. Your family's land is now imperial property. Your labor is now a tax. Your soul. Let's call it optional. Your fringe fact tonight, Mongol census officers sometimes classified peasants, not just by age and household, but by stamina. Yes, you can be worth more if you can walk 50 miles without fainting. Spoiler, you can't. You walk past the remains of your neighbor's cart. It's been snapped in half, the wheels stolen, the ox taken for tribute. They say tribute like it's a ceremony. It's not. It's just legalized theft, wrapped in horsehair and smirks. You reach the central square, or what's left of it. There's a new pole there now, freshly planted, no flags, no signs, just a pole, and next to it, a rope. You don't ask, you just keep walking. Because today is the beginning of your first full day as a conquered peasant in the Mongol Empire. And if you think you're getting through this in one piece, you probably won't survive the morning. The morning tax collectors arrive early, not sunrise early, not beat the rooster early, no Mongol early. As in, you were still dreaming about bread early. You hear them before you see them, hoofbeats on hard earth, fast and rhythmic, followed by the sharp, unnatural silence of villagers trying not to be noticed. Dogs stop barking, chickens go still. Even the crows on the fence post suddenly look like they regret showing up. You scramble outside, bare feet cold against the ground. Tunic still damp from the wash you didn't finish yesterday. You almost forget to bow. Almost. But the sight of those fur-trimmed boots dismounting in front of you reminds you exactly how low to go. You bend until you can smell your own knees. A grunt. Then a voice low, gravelly, with that odd lilt Mongol speakers have when they're speaking your language and enjoying how bad you are at theirs. Grain. One word. You nod. You rush back into the house, really just a two-room hut that pretends not to fall apart during strong winds, and grab your sack. It's half full. That's all you have. You hope it's enough. You hope wrong. You offer it with both hands. Head still bowed. He doesn't take it. Instead, he turns to the boy beside him, barely a teen. Smug, holding a list scratched into bark. The boy says, "Short." You glance up. Mistake. The tax collector backhands you not viciously, just enough to reestablish the natural order of things. You're a peasant. He's the empire. You get back down. Sack still in hand. Mouth bleeding now. Historians still argue whether Mongol tax systems were efficient or just terrifying. But we know they used precise population counts, knew exactly how much each household should produce, and often adjusted quotas based on previous years. Sounds fair unless you're the one who can't grow enough because the ox that used to plow your fields was taken as a gift to the Khan. Your fringe fact tonight? Some Mongol scribes could calculate expected sheep yields per wife in a household. Imagine losing your dinner because your cousin got married. The collector finally takes your grain. He smells it, weighs it in his palm like he's judging its opinions. Then he gestures again. Tools. You hesitate. He doesn't. Your hoe, your knife, even your sharpening stone. Gone. Loaded onto the pony cart like souvenirs? You wonder how you're supposed to plant anything now. You wonder if you're supposed to. You hear your neighbor old Marek try to protest. His voice cracks. Please, my daughter is sick. The collector doesn't strike him. He smiles. Then he takes Marek's goat. Marek doesn't scream. Not here. Screaming is private now. You don't say goodbye. You don't say anything, because your turn's not over. The boy with the list looks at your feet. No leather. You shake your head. No shoes. You glance down at your toes, dirt-crusted, bruised, but technically covered in the remnants of something that might have once been sandals. You shrug. He grins. Fine. He keeps his shoes. They laugh. You don't. The collectors mount their horses. The pony cart rattles off toward the next house, leaving you behind with empty hands and one less tool than yesterday. You look down at your blood-speckled tunic. You haven't even had breakfast. And already, you owe more. The yurt that isn't yours leaks. Not just when it rains, though, when it does. The whole place smells like a wet sheep holding a grudge, but even now, with no clouds, sunlight streams through the seams in the felt like it's looking for something to judge. You sit cross-legged near the fire pit in the center, which is not burning because you have no firewood. The coals are asleep. Your fingers are cold. This is your home now. Or at least the place they assigned you after your original house was repurposed for storage, which apparently includes saddles, tribute grain, and one very fat rooster that now belongs to the quartermaster. Your old house had creaking beams and a door that stuck every winter. This one, no door. Just a flap, no corners, just curves, no privacy. Just a thin wool sheet separating you from the family you were forced to share it with last week. You glance across the space. 3 people lie bundled in sheepskins, pretending to sleep. One child stares at you from the other side of the yurt like you're a strange beetle. You stare back. You don't blink first. The flap lifts. A cold gust barges in like it pays rent. Your host Togri, a low-level Mongol herdsman assigned to oversee you, ducks in. He carries a pot. You smell it before you see it. Horse milk. Again, it's sour enough to peel paint, thick enough to count as soup, and warm enough to be suspicious. Togri slaps it down beside the fire pit and gestures for you to drink. No words, just a nod. You obey. Of course you do. You take a sip. It tastes like someone dared vinegar to become yogurt. You hold it down. Togri watches, amused. Then he sits, fiddles with a bone pendant hanging from his neck. Grunts something in Mongolian you don't understand. You smile weakly. He laughs. You're not sure if it's friendly or if he's imagining what your face will look like when you find out that wasn't just milk. Historians still argue how Mongol yurts were used in occupied villages, whether they replaced homes entirely or were set up alongside local dwellings. What's known is that Mongol officers often moved in and rearranged villages to suit their logistical needs. If your house had a straight wall, congratulations, it's now a command post. Your fringe fact tonight. Some conquered peasants were ordered to build yurts for their new overlords, meaning you might spend all day constructing a dwelling, just to get kicked out of it once it was imperially adequate. You finish the milk. Togri grunts again, tosses you a chunk of dried meat that might be yak, might be camel, might be ambitious goat. You chew it slowly, pretending it doesn't fight back. Then he leaves. No goodbye? Just cold air in his place. You sit there, lips puckered, stomach unsure, and realize this yurt. It isn't shelter. It's a symbol. Round, endless, inescapable. Just like your new life. You lie back on the mat. Straw pokes your ribs. The ceiling sways slightly in the wind. You close your eyes and hear the child across the room whisper something in Mongolian. You don't understand it, but you're pretty sure it means you don't belong here. You bow or you burn. That's not a proverb. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual choice you were given last week when the Mongol cavalry arrived. And you chose wisely. Well, wisely-ish. You bowed. You didn't just lower your head. You prostrated forehead to dirt, hands out, spine curved like a scolded dog. Your knees creaked. Your pride fell out your ears. And because you did that quickly enough, they didn't torch your face. They torched other things, though, like the grain silo and the community well, and the goat that made eye contact with the wrong soldier. But you gotta live. For now. This morning, you find yourself lining up with the rest of the village beside what used to be the temple wall. It's barely standing, smoke-scorched and held upright mostly by memory. In front of you, 3 Mongol riders sit silently on massive horses that look like they've never heard the word no. The riders don't move. They barely blink. They wear the same layered lamellar armor, bits of leather and iron laced together in quiet menace. One's holding a spear, the other a torch. Not lit. Not yet. But it's there. The man in the middle steps forward. He holds a scroll, unfurls it, reads. It's not in your language, but you've learned to interpret tone. And this tone is full of, if you mess this up, I'm going to turn your wheat into ash. Someone behind you sneezes. Everyone freezes. The riders don't move. The scroll is re-rolled. Then the speaker points at you. Oh, great. You step forward, bow immediately. Forehead hits dirt so fast you might invent whiplash. There's silence. Then a grunt. Then a tap on your shoulder. You rise, you bow again. You retreat. That was the test. You passed? This time. Historians still argue how strictly Mongol customs of submission were enforced in conquered settlements. Some records suggest a rigid protocol: bow deeply, never look a mounted Mongol in the eye, and definitely don't speak unless invited. Others believe enforcement varied based on rank mood, or the weather. Your fringe fact tonight: one Persian chronicler claimed that a man was executed not for speaking out of turn, but for sighing too loudly while in the presence of a Mongol general. Apparently, he just stubbed his toe. You return to your spot in the line. Your knees are brown with dust. Your hands still shake. Someone beside you whispers, "You're lucky." You don't feel lucky. You feel bowed, bent, folded like a parchment that no one plans to read again. The man with the torch doesn't light it today, but he wants to. You can see it in his posture. You can smell the flint on his fingers. And you know deep down that it takes nothing, one bad mood, one crooked bow, one baby that won't stop crying for fire to become diplomacy. Because here in the Mongol Empire, respect isn't earned, it's extracted. And if you don't give it willingly, they'll burn it out at you. Your neighbors disappear without comment. No goodbyes, no weeping farewells, no last minute please, just absence. You notice it first with the Dari family. Yesterday, their fire smoked steadily. This morning, the ash pile is cold and untouched. Their hut sits half open, mat curled like a tongue, shoes still placed neatly by the door as if they meant to come back. They didn't. No one speaks of it. You make the mistake of asking a boy 9, maybe 10 if he saw where they went. He shrugs and says, "South, probably." You nod, as if that explains anything. South could mean reassignment, it could mean labor camps, it could mean burial, or worse, service. Because in the Mongol Empire, people don't just disappear. They get redistributed, like grain, or saddles, or particularly obedient goats. You turn back toward the well, only half full now. Someone whispers behind you. They took the young ones, strong backs, good teeth. You try not to look directly at your own child, who is still asleep, still curled up beside a fire you've barely managed to keep going with dry weeds and wishful thinking. You wonder if tomorrow you'll wake up and your own name will have been reassigned. Historians still argue whether Mongol relocation policies were calculated population control or logistical necessity. Some scholars highlight their use of forced migrations to stabilize frontier regions. Others point to written records where entire villages are marked simply dispersed to pasture land, as if humans were cattle. Your fringe fact tonight: one Mongol record classified peasant families as either productive, potential, or replaceable. The Dari were likely the latter. That evening, you notice another house dark. The Hamads. Gone. No trace. Just a spoon in the dirt and a wet line in the dust where a water jug was dragged away. You ask no questions this time. No one does. No. Because here's the unspoken truth in the Mongol system. To be noticed is often worse than being forgotten. And sometimes silence is the only language left when every other word might end your sentence prematurely. You try to work harder, to stay useful, to smile when handed tasks and say thank you when handed less than scraps. Because being visible is dangerous, but being indispensable, that's your only chance at staying put. Someone coughs in the next hut over, hard, repeatedly. Everyone hears it. No one reacts. You count the households again before bed. Fewer than yesterday. You hold your child tighter that night and dream of nothing. Because dreaming too vividly feels like tempting fate to come looking for you next. Breakfast is horse milk and dust. You wake up hungry. Of course you do. Hunger is now your constant companion, like an annoying sibling who kicks your ribs from the inside and grumbles whenever you even think about chewing. You blink in the pale morning light that leaks through the felt seams of the yurt. Togri, your Mongol overseer, is already up. He doesn't sleep. You're not sure he's even mortal. He grunts something, throws a rag in your direction, and points to the bowl sitting by the fire pit. You approach it slowly, like it might hiss. And there it is, a shimmering, chalky puddle of fermented horse milk arag. It smells exactly how you remember it, like a dare, a threat, and a stomach ache waiting to happen. You sip, it kicks your sinuses before it even hits your tongue. You swallow anyway, not out of bravery, out of strategy. There might not be anything else until sunset. And your stomach is too hollow to protest anymore. You turn the bowl for your child. They take a gulp, cough once, and blink back tears. You pat their back. Pretend it's normal. The dust is everywhere. In your throat. In your food. In the folds of your clothing. It settles on your bowl as you drink, giving it a bit of crunch. A chewy texture. They'd call it in a tavern. You call it grit. Historians still argue whether Mongol cuisine was respected by conquered peoples or merely endured. What's clear is that their diet rich in dairy, meat, and fermented drinks was a shock to agrarian populations used to grains, pulses, and cooked stews. For you, this stuff might as well be acid in a cup. Your fringe fact tonight? Some Mongols preferred to ferment mare's milk while riding, using leather sacks tied to the saddle and churned by the horse's motion. Translation: that sip you just took could have been massaged by a trotting pony. You choke a little on the next gulp. Togri watches, amused. Good, he asks in your language. Awkward but intentional. You nod. Because what else can you do? You try not to think about the carrots you used to grow, the beans your neighbor used to roast with salt and cracked garlic, the way your mother once whispered that breakfast was a sacred act, the way a day says thank you to the body. Now, breakfast is just proof you're still owned. You get up, you brush the dust from your knees, you step outside into wind that immediately replaces all the dust you just shook off. You cough once, then again, then you stop yourself. Because the wrong cough might sound like weakness, and weakness is one of the fastest ways to disappear. The bowl gets passed to another family across the way. You watch them drink. One of them spits into the dirt. Their overseer sees it. You turn away before you see what happens next. Inside the yurt, your child asks, "Do we have bread?" You say, "Soon," which is a lie. But in the Mongol Empire, lies taste better than breakfast. The kid who tattled for a turnip doesn't even look guilty. He stands there in the middle of the square, all elbows and confidence, chewing that pale, half-rotten root like it's roasted duck. The top of it flops with every bite. He doesn't care. His name is Burke. He's maybe 12, definitely sharper than he lets on. Sleeps in the yurt closest to the guard tent, laughs too loudly when people fall, and today he's wearing new shoes. Not fancy, not even well made, but they fit. They're intact. And in this village, that's enough to raise suspicion. You'd ask where he got them? But you already know. He pointed, and someone disappeared. It happened just after dawn. A pair of Mongol guards stomped through the outer huts. One of them shouted a name, your neighbor's name, the one who used to whisper stories to the children at night, even when her lips were cracked from cold. They dragged her out. No one saw her come back. You saw Burke talking to one of the guards later, grinning like a puppy who'd just fetched something disgusting. Then the shoes appeared. Then the turnip. Historians still argue how much the Mongols relied on local informants. Some say they fostered elaborate networks of spies and child messengers, rewarding them with food, safety, or the occasional live rabbit. Others believe the atmosphere of fear just made everyone a potential betrayer. Your fringe fact tonight: in some conquered areas, children were recruited to memorize and repeat daily attendance rosters, in part to catch errors. One mistake and the child might be rewarded for pointing it out, or punished for not doing it sooner. You avoid Burke now. Everyone does. But the damage is done. You look around and realize something awful. You're starting to understand the system. You know which nod means I saw you. You know which gesture means don't speak. You know which glance says, you're next. The turnip crunches again. He spits a chunk into the dust. Someone behind you mutters, that should have been mine. You pretend not to hear it, because now even thoughts feel dangerous. You return to your work, a miserable chore hauling goat dung from one pen to another, a job so pointless it feels like satire. But it's not. It's a test. You shovel faster to keep your head down. Burke walks by. He waves. You don't wave back, because the new rule is clear: anyone with shoes that clean isn't on your side. You don't speak Mongolian yet, but it turns out you don't need a dictionary to understand the tone that means. Hurry up or I'll repurpose your spine. This morning, one of the guards barked something at you while pointing toward the livestock pen. You hesitated half a breath too long. You were trying to remember the difference between Korea look and Korea guard, which somehow sound the same and mean completely different things. That breath cost you a bruise on your shoulder and a chunk of your pride. Now you nod at everything. Say yes with your eyes. Say sorry with your back. And say please don't hit me again with every careful step you take around authority. You try to pick up words. You hear ek and ku mother, son. You hear kugshinold. You hear yamugui nothing. That one. You hear a lot. Historians still argue whether Mongol rulers expected linguistic assimilation or simply enjoyed watching the conquered squirm. Some claim interpreters were common and multilingualism was valued. Others note that confusion often led to accidental deaths, which nobody seemed to mind. Your fringe fact tonight: the Mongols employed language testers, fluent local speakers whose job was to catch people faking ignorance. They'd pretend to speak your tongue badly, and if you corrected them, congratulations. You understood and just outed yourself. You try not to speak at all. In the pen, you shuffle hay into a feed trough. A man beside you, older, bent like a question mark, murmurs something in your native tongue. You glance up. He points to a young boy across the yard. He was beaten yesterday, he says. For saying hello? You nod once. You keep working. The boy limps past you a few minutes later. He stares down at the ground like it owes him something. You want to say, I'm sorry. You don't. The Mongol guard nearby yawns, cracks his knuckles, and spits. Then he calls something out. You freeze. He repeats it. Louder. Everyone turns to you. You scramble to react, dropping the pitchfork. Running toward a stack of sacks you assume he once moved. Wrong again. You hear a whip crack. Pain wraps around your ribs like a scarf made of fire. You fall. You don't scream. Because you know better now. The whip doesn't mean you're wrong. It means learn faster. You get up. Grab the right sack this time. You try to say something close to forgive me. The guard raises one eyebrow, then snorts and walks away. Maybe you got it right. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he just likes to pace before lunch. You don't know. You can't know. Because language here isn't about grammar or fluency. It's about survival. And in the Mongol Empire, you either speak quickly or bleed quietly. Assigned to shovel dung for empire? That's your title now. Not farmer. Not father. Not weaver. Not wife. You are officially a Mongol dung laborer. Grade 1, which is a fancy way of saying you hold the stick. You move the stink. And you don't complain. At least not out loud. This morning, you were handed a tool so blunt it might have once been a shovel and then lost its ambition. The handle is splintered. The head is chipped. But it's yours at least until someone stronger wants it more. Your job cleaned the animal pens. Specifically, the horses. Dozens of them. Each a muscular poem in hooves and muscle and attitude. They look at you like they've read your obituary and weren't impressed. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about cleanliness. No. This dung is destined. For bricks, for insulation, for fuel, for Mongol roads, walls, fires, and possibly snacks, don't ask. You're not just scooping waste. You're fueling the empire. You don't get gloves. You don't get water. You just get watched. The Mongol overseeing this operation is named something like Borgen. But you just think of him as stares too hard, leans against a post chewing dried meat, and judging your posture. Every now and then, he claps. Not for encouragement, just to scare you. Historians still argue whether conquered peoples were used primarily for skilled labor or brute grunt work. Evidence suggests a healthy blend. If you could count taxes or play the lute, maybe you were spared the shovel. If not, hello, animal waste. Your fringe fact tonight? Mongol military camps sometimes rationed dried dung as a form of currency among lower-ranked laborers. That's right. If you're lucky, someday you might earn enough poop to buy a root vegetable. You step into the pen. It squelches. Not metaphorically. Actually, the smell is something you stop resisting and just begin acknowledging. Like the sky. Or betrayal. You scoop. You dump. You repeat. Someone behind you mutters a prayer. Another hums. You say nothing. One boy jokes. Maybe if I clean well enough, they'll let me ride. Everyone laughs. Then stops. Because that joke is only funny until you realize they might make you ride. And not for fun. You glance up. One of the Mongol horses is watching you. Just watching. Head tilted slightly. You nod at it. Respectfully. You scoop again. The wheelbarrow creaks. The dung steams. You're ankle deep in what you now call career growth. By noon, your back screams. Your hands burn, and your soul smells like the pen. But you keep working. Because out here, everyone gets the same performance review. Still moving. Not bleeding? Good. The local shaman blesses your pain. Not in the way you might hope. Not with healing herbs, kind words, or a gentle hand on your aching back. No, this blessing comes with smoke, muttering, and something that looks suspiciously like a rabbit's foot soaked in vinegar. You didn't ask for this. No one ever does. But apparently, one of the Mongol officers has developed a limp, and now everyone's getting a community-wide spirit check. Because clearly, someone offended the ancestors. You gather with the others in the central square. A stone circle has been laid out in chalk and ash. It smells like scorched garlic and disappointment. The shaman arrives robes of patchwork fur, hair braided with beads and what might be teeth, and a stare that goes straight through your skin and into the part of your brain that still believes in ghosts. He says something in Mongolian, loud, chanting, rhythmic. You don't understand a word, but you bow anyway. That's the default reaction now. He steps into the circle, twirls, chants louder. Someone near you sneezes. The shaman pauses, points, then tosses a clump of smoldering leaves at the poor woman's feet and mutters something that sounds like bad milk spirit. You step away slightly. The chant resumes. The crowd sways. Smoke rises. You get doused in a fine spray of something that smells like fermented onions and horse sweat. It's thrown from a leather pouch and hits you square in the chest. You don't flinch. You've learned. Historians still argue whether Mongol shamans were state-approved or village-based mystics running on vibes and guesswork. Some believe their role was central to daily governance. Others suggest they were trotted out mainly when things went wrong, and somebody had to be blamed spiritually. Your fringe fact tonight. Some Mongol shamans were believed to enter trance states by spinning until they passed out, waking up with answers, which means your entire future might rest on a very dizzy man's dreams. The ritual continues. Someone starts crying. Someone else throws up. A child laughs, then gets shushed so aggressively it sounds like a curse. The shaman sprinkles something into the fire, a hissing mix of herbs, twigs, and probably powdered beetle. The flames flash green for a second. Everyone gasps. You pretend to gasp too. It feels safer that way. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ends. The shaman claps twice. Silence. He points to the officer's foot. The officer steps forward, walks 3 paces, still limping. The shaman squints, then shrugs. Apparently, the spirits are partially satisfied. That means you're mostly innocent, which, in Mongol terms, is a huge win. You're dismissed. No bloodletting, no exile, no being tied to a stake and questioned by moonlight. Just a chest that smells like onion wine and a fresh layer of soot in your hair. You return to your yurt. You lie down, and you try not to think too hard about the green flames, or the shaman's eyes, or the question nobody asked. What happens when the spirits aren't satisfied at all? The census that counts teeth, not souls. It starts with shouting, then bells, then the unmistakable shuffle of hundreds of reluctant feet on dry earth. You file into the square because you're told to. Because not showing up is the sort of mistake they make examples out of. And no one here wants to be the next example. At the center of the square, under a canopy of worn silk and stern glares, sits a scribe. Not a soldier, not a shaman. This one has ink-stained fingers, a clipboard made of wood and sinew, and an expression that says he values efficiency over everything, including your life. He doesn't look up as people approach. He just mutters, name, age, teeth. You're not even sure if that's a question or a warning. You wait. 2 villagers ahead of you. One is missing a thumb. The scribe writes something. The other is missing an ear. The scribe writes something else. You inch forward. A Mongol soldier steps beside the scribe, just in case someone gets clever. He is not holding a pen. He is holding a stick. You make it to the front. The scribe finally looks at you. He gestures. Open. You do. He counts your teeth, not your children, not your skills, not your dreams or sins or even your unpaid debts. Just your teeth. You don't know why. You don't ask. He grunts, jots down a number, then grabs your wrist and measures the width of your palm, then your elbow, then oddly your foot. Each time he finishes, he murmurs something to the soldier, who nods once. It feels less like a record and more like an auction listing. Historians still argue whether Mongol censuses were for taxation, military conscription, or population control. Likely, it was all three. Genghis Khan famously ordered full empire-wide counts to track every productive body. But in some regions, the detail extended to measurements. Because a strong back meant potential, a small child meant future. And you're currently usable. Your fringe fact tonight. Some Mongol census books were so detailed they recorded how many windows each hut had and how many chickens were likely to survive winter. You try not to wonder which column you were sorted into. The scribe stamps your wrist, not ink. Ash, he does it fast. Thumb, press, move. You don't ask what it means, but you notice something the elderly? No stamp. The infirm? No stamp. The boy with a limp? No stamp. Just you. And the ones who can carry, dig, haul, and fight? The stamped? You step away. Back into the crowd. You look around and realize that, for once, the square is silent. No wailing babies. No whispers. No prayers. Just the collective recognition that today, you weren't counted for who you are. You were counted for how much you weigh in tools and grain, and days worked without collapsing. You rub your wrist. The ash mark fades slightly, but not in your mind. Because now you know you're not a person, you're a unit. And tomorrow you'll be used accordingly. One wrong word, one missing head. It happens fast. You don't see the beginning, just the middle. The part where a man young, broad-shouldered, always quiet stands beside the grain carts. He's holding a basket, maybe too tightly. A Mongol officer approaches, says something. You don't catch it. The man replies. You hear his words. Just two. Not angry. Not loud. But the second word. The second word has tone. That's all it takes. The officer pauses, then says something back short. Sharp. Everyone freezes. You pretend to be very interested in a rope by your feet. There's a clink. Metal unsheathed. Not a whip. Not a knife. A sword. The crowd exhales without making a sound. The man says something else. Maybe wait. The officer doesn't. One step. One swing. It's done. You flinch but don't blink. That's a learned skill now. The basket hits the ground first. Then the body. Then the head. Very softly. Like it's apologizing for getting involved. No screams, no gasp. Just emptiness. The kind of silence that gets behind your eyes and lives there for a while. The officer doesn't gloat. He doesn't yell. He just flicks the blade once, as if shaking off soup, then walks away. It takes 3 whole breaths before anyone moves. You hear a soft voice near you whisper. He said, why? That's all. Just why. Not I won't. Not you can't. Just a question. Historians still argue whether Mongol justice was consistent or arbitrary. Some records praise their swift, uncompromising discipline order maintained by absolute clarity. Others point to executions over accidents, misunderstandings, or perceived disrespect. What is clear, they didn't repeat themselves. Your fringe fact tonight. One Mongol commander was known to carry a pouch of pebbles. Each time he warned a person, he gave them a stone. 3 stones meant death. Once, he skipped straight to 0. You look down at your hands, empty. Still, you tell yourself not to clench them. That's how bruises start. That's how attention happens. A woman nearby begins sweeping the blood from the dust. Not with panic, not with reverence, just methodically, like it's another chore on the list. You feel a breeze. It smells like smoke and meat. child asks where the man went. His mother says he's working far away now. You nod as if that makes sense, as if that isn't everybody's fate. You walk away, slowly, carefully, because today you learned the true weight of a word, and tomorrow you won't speak unless the wind tells you it's safe. The Mongol messenger never rides alone. You hear the hoofbeats first far off, soft at first, like distant thunder with better timing. Then the wind shifts, and suddenly it's not soft anymore. It's coming fast, rhythmic, a pulse of power. Everyone freezes because everyone knows that sound. A yam rider. The imperial postal system called the yam is the heartbeat of the Mongol Empire. And every beat carries weight. Orders, news, death warrants, marriage arrangements, inventory requests for saddles or swords or entire populations. You stand very still. The horse thunders into the square like it owns it. Which, to be fair, it kind of does. The rider is lean, sharp-eyed, layered in furs, and carries a satchel sealed with dark red wax and 4 different cords. Nobody touches it. Nobody speaks to him. He doesn't slow, he just drops off a roll of messages at the outpost post, spins his horse in one fluid motion, and is gone again before the dust has time to settle. The whole thing takes 12 seconds. You blink, and it's over. The local steward picks up the scrolls carefully, sorting them with a level of reverence usually reserved for rare relics or dangerously hot soup. He reads one, grunts, and walks toward the main yurt without saying a word. You still don't move. Because when a yam rider appears, things change. Historians still argue how efficient the Mongol postal system really was. Some claim it rivaled the Roman cursus in scope and speed. Others believe it was less about efficiency and more about terror on horseback. A visible reminder that the Khan could whisper into your village from 1,000 miles away and still be heard by nightfall. Your fringe fact tonight: elite yam riders carried a silver paisa, a medallion granting them the power to commandeer horses, food, shelter, and even local officials. You had to obey them like you would a general. Or else, the man beside you exhales. Messenger's gone. You nod, as if that means everything's fine. But it doesn't. Because yam riders never just drop off mail. They shift the balance of the day. Sometimes they bring orders to relocate families. Sometimes to collect additional food stores. Sometimes they carry news of a rebellion and instructions to root out sympathizers. Sometimes they don't say anything. And that's worse, because silence from the Empire means the storm is still forming. The steward returns. He doesn't make eye contact. He points to 3 men. You. Come. No explanation. Just that. You're not one of them. This time, they follow. No one asks where. Because we all know the answer. Even if it's different every time. The dust settles. The hoofprints remain. You go back to your dung pile and pretend that the rider never came. But deep down, you know he'll be back. And next time he might be carrying your name. Night falls and the wolves sound close. You sit just outside the yurt, knees pulled to your chest, the last embers of the evening fire painting your feet in flickering orange. The day was long, but then, they all are now. The sun went down an hour ago, and that's when the howling started. Not poetic howling, not the wistful kind you read about in songs. No. This is wet-throated, teeth-bared. We're close enough to smell you howling. It rolls across the steppe like a warning wrapped in fur. You listen, because you can't not. Every other sound, the soft wind, the rustle of tents, the whisper of straw inside the yurts fades until all you hear are those voices in the dark. And they're getting closer. Your child stirs beside you. Are they hunting? You nod. You don't say what they're hunting, because you've seen what's left of goats taken in the night. And once, 2 weeks ago, a man who didn't make it back from latrine duty, they said it was wolves. Maybe, maybe not. But tonight, it sounds like wolves. Historians still argue whether wolves were a genuine threat in Mongol-controlled territories, or whether their presence became exaggerated by fear and campfire stories. What's certain is that wilderness wasn't tamed by conquest, and that included what prowled on 4 legs. Your fringe fact tonight: Mongol cavalry sometimes left meat outside tents to lure wolves closer, believing them to be sacred guides or test spirits sent by Tengri. This doesn't help you sleep. The howling sharpens, then cuts. Silence. Which is worse? You draw your child in close. You think about the door, just a flap of felt and frayed rope, and what? Exactly. It could stop. Probably not teeth. Definitely not hunger. Togri, your yurt's assigned overseer, snores on the far side. Loudly, like a man who believes the Empire's authority reaches into the dark. You envy that confidence. You listen again. A distant growl. Then, very faintly, the clinking of metal. Not wolves. Not this time. You peek out and see a rider a night patrol. Mongol guard, bow slung across his back, sword glinting under moonlight. His horse walks slowly, almost respectfully. He's watching the edge of the camp like the wolves are more than animals. Maybe they are. The steppe holds old things, and old things never forget the smell of prey. You go back inside the yurt, quietly, lie on the mat, hold your child close. The felt walls do little to mute the sounds outside. The creaking, the wind, the occasional scrape of something moving too close to the yurt's edge. You try to sleep, but you can't help feeling that someone is counting the yurts tonight. Not from within, but from the trees. The bride market doesn't need your opinion. You wake to drums, not the war kind, not the celebration kind. These are transactional drums. Rhythmic, slow. They echo across the steppe like a polite knock from fate. Togri tells you what's happening with a grunt and a single word. Sweek. Marriage. Your stomach sinks, because you know what day it is. The bride market has arrived. It's not a real market. Not like stalls and coin and haggling. It's more like a showcase. A ceremony masquerading as a choice. You walk to the central ring where a line has formed. Girls, mostly teenagers, some even younger, dressed in their best, often just the cleanest tunic or a braid that's held together for more than a few hours. You see her, your daughter. She's standing in the line. No one asked you. No one told you she'd be chosen. She doesn't cry. She's too smart for that. You walk to the edge of the ring. You don't cross into it. There's an invisible barrier there more powerful than any fence, and if you step into it, uninvited. Let's just say the man who tried that last year isn't here to offer advice. One by one, the girls are inspected, not tenderly. Hands to jaw, elbows, teeth, hips. A Mongol elder nods, makes notes. Next. Next. The man beside you mutters. 1 goat, 2 bolts of silk. Sometimes a sheep if she's quiet. You don't look at him. You're too busy watching your child pretending to be a resource. Historians still argue whether Mongol marriage markets were genuinely for alliances or just soft slavery. Some accounts describe vibrant matchmaking rituals, complete with songs and bride gifts. Others point to forced pairings, dictated by need, availability, or someone's surplus of sheep. Your fringe fact tonight, Genghis Khan himself married off daughters to allies as a political tool, then stationed them as governors. Romance was not part of the arrangement. The drum slows. A man steps forward, mid-40s, smells of horse sweat and onion broth, wealthy enough to have a feather in his cap. He points to her. No negotiation, no eye contact, just gesture, acquisition. The elder nods. The girl is led away. You flinch, but stay still, because love doesn't outrank hierarchy, and your opinion isn't even relevant. Your daughter walks past you. Her face doesn't break. Her posture doesn't dip. She's pretending she understands. Pretending it's fine. You do the same. Because your only option now is to keep pretending that this isn't happening. Later, someone hands you a cloth bundle. Inside one belt buckle, 3 dried dates, a piece of dyed string, your bride price. They don't even give you the goat. You don't ask where she's going. You don't ask who with. Because here, a girl doesn't become a wife. She becomes part of the system. And the system doesn't explain itself. Religion is tolerated, just don't preach. You light a small candle before dawn. It's not part of any official ritual. Just something you've done since childhood. A tiny flame. A whispered name. A quiet hope that anyone is still listening. You draw the mark in the dirt. A symbol your mother taught you. Not elaborate. Just enough to say I'm still me. Then you cover it with your foot. Because you heard what happened last week to the man from the next camp. He tried to lead a prayer. Just a short one. 5 words and a bow. No big scene. But he spoke too loudly. The Mongol overseer didn't yell. He didn't raise a weapon. He just ordered the man's hands bound and had him marched out with the goats. No one's seen him since. You heard one of the soldiers joke. Maybe he went to meet his god. And that's when everyone started praying silently. Historians still argue whether the Mongols were unusually tolerant of religion or just too pragmatic to care what gods you worshipped. Under Genghis Khan, many religions flourished: Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Tengriism, all permitted under one condition: they never interfered with the state. Your fringe fact tonight? Some Mongol officials required traveling clergy to carry a certificate of belief, literally a license to pray. Forget the scroll that's on you. This morning, the air smells like dust and boiled meat, the kind of smell that feels indifferent to theology. You bow your head in your tent, murmur words without sound, close your eyes. A creak outside. Your heart stutters, but it's just Togri, your yurt's overseer, lifting the flap to spit. He sees the candle. He grunts, then blows it out. Not angrily, just bored. And somehow that's worse. You stare at the little curl of smoke rising into the dawn. That was your offering, your confession, your resistance. Gone in a puff. Someone behind you whispers a prayer in a different tongue. You don't recognize it, but you nod. Because in the Mongol Empire, belief is tolerated as long as it stays invisible. You can kneel, you can bow, you can even fast, as long as you work twice as hard afterward. But build a shrine, speak a sermon, gather a crowd that's not religion, that's sedition. Later that night, you find a small mark scratched into the wood near your sleeping mat. It's not yours, but it's familiar. Someone else still believes. Someone else still hopes. You press your thumb to it, just once. Then cover it with straw, because here faith survives. But only if it stays quiet. Your grain is theirs. Your ox is theirs. It starts with a knock. Not the polite kind. More like a flat-handed thud that makes the yurt flap shiver. You're outside, sorting the barley sacks, what's left of them. Anyway, you've been drying the grain on scraps of canvas in the sun, trying to salvage what didn't rot in last week's rain. One sack's nearly full. You're proud of it. You shouldn't be. Togri appears at your side, not bothering to announce himself. He points to the sack, then to the cart that just rolled into the clearing, pulled by 2 unfamiliar horses and guarded by 3 men in armor too clean to trust. You hesitate. He grunts. You lift the sack. It's heavier than it should be. Probably because it's not yours anymore. You load it onto the cart. The guards nod like they've just claimed something that always belonged to them. One of them tosses you a dried fish as compensation. It lands in the dirt. You don't pick it up. They point to the pen next. You follow their gaze. The ox. Your ox. The one that survived the fire. The one that plowed your fields for 5 years, pulled water from the well, and stood patiently through a winter so cold your own fingers stopped working. You shake your head. The lead guard raises an eyebrow. Togri doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The ox is led away. No ceremony, no pause. Just another piece of empire logistics. Historians still argue whether the Mongol tribute system was taxation or legalized looting. Some documents describe careful inventory taking ledgers of grain, livestock, cloth, and labor hours. Others mention gathering parties who showed up unannounced and left with everything but the walls. Your fringe fact tonight. In some provinces, oxen were branded not with ownership marks, but destination stamps. The animal didn't belong to anyone. It belonged to the next stop on the empire's supply chain. You sit on the ground. The fish still lies beside you, buzzing with flies. You finally pick it up, not because you want to, but because dinner is now the taste of loss. The yurt feels smaller when you return. You tell your child the ox is helping the empire. They don't believe you. They say, they'll take the goats next. You nod. Because they're right. Ownership is a memory now. You don't have possessions. You have temporary responsibilities. And everything you grow, build, feed, fix, or love. You're just preparing it for someone else. You lie down and close your eyes. You dream of grain that doesn't get counted, of an ox that walks back home, and of a guard who doesn't exist. Because dreams are the only things here you can still claim as yours. For now, disease travels fast on trade winds. It starts with a cough, not yours. Someone else's sharp, wet, close enough to feel. You glance over. The man beside you hunches forward, hand to his mouth. Shaking. He doesn't look good. Sunken cheeks, glossy eyes, skin with that yellow-gray tinge you've started to recognize. You take a step back. Quietly. No one says anything. Because no one wants to draw attention to illness. That's the new rule. You still remember what happened 2 weeks ago. A woman from the northern tents collapsed while drawing water. She had a fever. She mumbled. She vomited. She was gone by sundown. Carted away on a wheelbarrow normally used for manure. No burial, no ritual. Just vanished. The next morning, a rider arrived, and half her yurt was relocated somewhere colder. Somewhere isolated. You never saw them again. Historians still argue how well the Mongol Empire managed public health. On one hand, their roads connected cities faster than any empire before. On the other, that meant diseases traveled as fast as horses could gallop. Your fringe fact tonight: some Mongol supply lines included corpse wagons, not for funeral processions, for containment. If a village had more than 5 sick, that wagon arrived fast. You didn't want to see it twice. This morning, you passed a man with boils on his neck. You said nothing. He said nothing, because even asking for help now is dangerous. Word travels. The Mongols like order. Illness is disorder. And anything that disrupts tribute collection is handled briskly. You hear coughing again tonight, closer this time. From inside your yurt, you look down at your child. Their forehead is warm, not hot, but warmer than usual. You feel the sweat behind their neck. It's slick. Too slick. You look around the firelight. Everyone's pretending not to notice. You do the same. You murmur a lullaby, one your mother used to sing. It feels like a lie in your mouth now, because lullabies only work in places where children wake up the next morning. You hold your breath. You count your heartbeats. Outside, a rider passes, no announcement, just presence. A shadow of the state moving through the dark. And you realize that here, where trade winds carry silks, spices, and sickness, breathing is now a political act. So you stay still. You stay quiet. And you hope the wind forgets your name. You dream of escape, then wake up. It's always the same dream. You're running not away from something, but towards something. A road that curves around a mountain, a trail lined with fig trees, a path that smells like freedom and freshly baked bread. No guards, no dung piles, no Mongol overseers humming while they sharpen their knives. You run fast. You're strong. You don't wheeze or limp or second-guess your steps. In the dream, your child is beside you, laughing, barefoot, eyes wide and fearless. You reach the edge of a hill. You see your old village, whole, green, not burned. You hear voices, familiar ones. Your cousin with the crooked smile, the neighbor who used to carve toys from wood, your mother stirring a pot and telling you to stop daydreaming. Then, snap, you're awake. And everything is wrong again. The yurt is stuffy. The smoke hole didn't stay open during the night. Your child's still asleep, curled into a knot, forehead slightly less warm than yesterday. You sit up slowly, stretch, feel the twinge in your back, like someone buried a pebble under your spine and forgot to take it out. You step outside, gray light, gray wind, gray thoughts. The ground is frozen at the edges, the road you dreamed of. It's just mud now. And even if you ran, where would you go? Historians still argue how often peasants escaped Mongol territories. Some documents list known runaways usually as warnings. Others suggest that escape was rare, not just because of fear, but because there was nowhere else to go. Borders were controlled, villages were watched, mountains were either impassable or full of wolves with worse manners than the taxmen. Your fringe fact tonight: Mongol law once allowed the execution of anyone who aided a fugitive. That included food, shelter, or even directions. Help a runner. You die like one. You walk past the ox pen. It's still empty. You walk past Burke, the turnip tattler. He's sleeping with his boots on, probably afraid someone will steal them back. You think about it for half a second, then move on. You wander toward the far edge of the camp, just to look, not to plan. Not officially. You imagine what it'd be like to walk until your legs gave out, to cross the hills, to find a road that leads somewhere where your name still matters. Then you hear a horn, not urgent, just routine. Work begins. Togri shouts something about moving the feed bags. You nod. You jog back. The moment breaks. Again. You spend the rest of the day digging a trench for a drainage ditch you didn't request and don't understand. At sunset, you'd lie in the dirt and stare up at the sky. It's wide, unforgiving, beautiful. Just like this empire. You close your eyes and dream again. Not because you believe you'll escape, but because dreaming is the only thing they haven't taxed yet. Surviving isn't winning. It's just still breathing. The wind shifts in the night. Colder, sharper. It sneaks through the seams of the yurt like a reminder that winter hasn't gone anywhere. It's just watching from the edge of the horizon, waiting for its next cue. You're already awake. You didn't really sleep. Just closed your eyes and pretended long enough for your body to stop shivering. Your child stirs. Their fever broke sometime after midnight. Their skin is clammy. Their breath steady. You whisper thanks to no one in particular. Maybe the dirt. Maybe the ancestors. Maybe the horse milk gods. You rise slowly. Your back protests. Your fingers crack. Your knees have that familiar crunchy ache, like gravel under skin. Outside, the camp is already shifting. Yurts creak, pots clank. Dung fires sputter to life. Someone's yelling, not in pain, just in charge. You don't flinch anymore because today is just another day in the Mongol Empire, which means no guarantees. You might be moved. You might be sold. You might be fed. Or not. You might watch someone vanish. You might have to smile through it. But one thing is certain. You will survive. And that's not a victory. It's a status. A state of not being eliminated. Historians still argue how much autonomy peasants had under Mongol rule. Some claim a surprising amount so long as quotas were met. Others believe the illusion of choice was part of the strategy. Give people just enough hope to keep them useful. Never enough to make them bold. Your final fringe fact tonight. Some conquered villagers were granted titles like Keeper of the Hearth or Protector of the Well. They were told it was an honor. In reality, it meant they'd be the first punished if anything went wrong. You light a small flame in your yurt, not for warmth, for memory. Because no matter how many days pass, how many sacks are emptied, how many names are forgotten, you are still here, still breathing, still holding on to the threadbare idea that one day might feel different. But until then, you dig, you bow, you hush your prayers. You say thank you for your bowl of arag even when it churns your stomach. Because that's what survival is now. Not joy, not peace, just persistence. And in the Mongol Empire, that's the only thing they'll let you keep. Now let your body rest. Let your thoughts slow like footsteps fading on an empty road. Like wind winding down after a long day of carrying too many voices. You're no longer under the wide, watchful sky of the Mongol Empire. No more horns, no more hooves, no more sharp commands. Just the quiet. The soft hush of memory unwinding into something gentler. You've survived the hunger. You've survived the stares. You've survived the silence. And now you don't have to carry anything else. Not today. Let your breathing settle. Let your hands uncurl. There is no cart to push, no overseer to please, no field to till. Just you. Here. Now. Floating slowly away from the dust and the weight and the names you weren't allowed to keep. You are more than your chores. You are more than what they counted. You are not a unit. You are not a quota. You are just stillness. Soft breath, warm skin, closed eyes. You are safe, if only for this moment. Let it stretch. Let it wrap around you like a blanket made of all the nights you thought you'd never get through. You made it through one more. You're still breathing. That's enough. That's everything. Sleep now. No one's watching. Not tonight.